It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning.
So says Dominic Toretto to undercover cop Brian O'Connor in The Fast and Furious. Except by the end of 1997, the Japanese economy was not winning. Financial panic was a thing. Excess had become excessive. That famous Eastern sun was setting on a now legendary time in motoring history. But what a glorious time it had been. The likes of the Mazda RX-7, the Toyota Supra, and the Honda NSX battling to the hearts and minds of a new generation of motoring enthusiasts. We all knew it was too good to last. And, of course, king among them all was the most famous Nissan GTR of all, and sadly, the last to bear the Skyline name.
Strap in tight for the Nissan Skyline GTR R34 in this episode of Overdrive. Guys, this is it, your last chance. This Bayside Blue GTR giveaway ends in just hours, and once it's gone, it is gone forever. Click the link, grab a shirt, grab a slap, or a quick entry pack, and you're gonna get 250x multiplier, the biggest we've ever offered. And right now, the odds are the best that they've ever been, and the shot at winning has never been higher. Don't let it slip, get entered today, and good skill.
Ideal Collective. Shop, buy, win.
Where do you even start with the R34 GTR? We have already sung our praises at the racing legend that it is, the R32 GTR, and then waxed lyrically over the R33 GTR in this Overdrive series. But the R34? This is the king of the jungle. And despite it being considerably slower than the later R35, it's the car we would sell a close relative for, and they would probably understand. We could start with its brilliance in the early, and still best Gran Turismo games, while it was the R33 GTR Nismo LM that was the intro scene star. The R34, though, made short work of its digital rivals.
Well, except for the wheelie-capable Suzuki Escudo.
It did not just look like a muscular, beefed-up monster with some of the best bits of the R32 and R33 rolled into one. It actually drove like one.
Everything Nissan had learned up until this very point refined into a Japanese powerhouse that you could tune to well over 1,000 horsepower, as in real life.
It was made even more iconic in the Need for Speed Underground series, where you could slap on some aftermarket trickery and a couple overnight parts from Japan and nitrous your way to victory in a polygonal blur. Nobody, and I mean nobody, messed with the king. If gaming wasn't enough of an introduction, there is no disputing its Hollywood blockbuster movie heritage. Brian O'Connor rocking up in a silver R34 GTR, breathing nitrous to the skies like a disgruntled dragon. This was a proper legend in the making. That silver paint job, those blue stripes, blue neons, and the baby blue eyes of Paul Walker, no wonder the car of the late star racked up 18,000 kilometers. And it went for second home in south of France retirement money.
Shit, it's Brian.
No, Suki, it's the R34 that you have to worry about. Just what makes the R34 GTR so special? Well, the main event is the 2.6 liter straight 6 RB26 DETT engine, also present in the R32 and R33. Kicking out the same gentleman's agreement of 276 horsepower, this engineering masterpiece was upgraded with ball bearing architecture for its twin turbos, decreasing the time needed to spool up and improving overall reliability.
Of course, as we talked about before, Nissan was lying big time, and not just horizontally. The R34 GTR's true power output was somewhere a bit over 300.
More, depending on who you asked, as long as it wasn't Nissan directly, and so it hit 0 to 62 miles per hour in around 5 seconds and topped out somewhere north of 155 miles per hour if you owned an Airstrip or you had access to an unrestricted Autobahn in Germany. Truth be told, the R34 needed a bit of a sneaky power hike as it weighed 1,560 kilograms and had become dimensionally larger. Still, it had an array of party tricks to keep things agile. A Tessa ETS and the ETS Pro version fitted to the V-Spec model offered at launch meant up to 50% of the power could be sent to the front wheels. This ensured that Mr. R34 GTR was usually never far from regaining traction, as it could effectively pull itself around a corner. As the speed increases, it feels less heavy and more precise, like a samurai's sword. HICUS, which is Nissan's rear-wheel steering system, also made a return. As before, the wheels would go opposite ways at slow speed to aid with maneuverability and turn in unison at higher speeds to help with cornering potential. But it still proved unreliable in the long run, and as with its predecessors, many owners disabled it or found it too inconsistent at speed.
Nissan made other changes to the 5th generation Skyline to keep enthusiasts happy. Out was the longer wheelbase of the R33, in was something a wee bit shorter.
Out, too, with the more svelte curves, and in with the blockier, beefier look seen with the R32. Only this time, after a lengthy course of steroids and protein shakes. And yet, the aerodynamics were improved in key areas. And Brembo slapped on bigger brakes. You also got a 6th gear, which made life less deafening on longer journeys.
Especially if you had upgraded the exhaust, which most people did because it was just way too easy to extract absurd power figures from the RB26 DETT lump. No self-respecting R34 video should neglect to mention the optimal multifunctional display, MFD for you acronym lovers.
This sizable screen was the nod to PlayStation gamers and car nerds the world over. This was because it showed you statistics that, according to the Fast and Furious movies, mattered to people other than scientists, engineers, and PlayStation gamers. Giving the R34 its computer on wheels cliche, you could check from an encyclopedic collection of stats and figures in 30-second increments. Oil temperature, turbo boost level, throttle opening, injector pressure. Things that you could read on screen and then drive on as normal because it really didn't matter. But you can bet it impressed people outside McDonald's on a rainy night in Stoke in the UK, or Japan's equivalent, whatever that would be. Some stuff was actually practical. The shift light, for instance, could be customized to turn on at a chosen rev limit. Just in case you wanted to eke every last horsepower in a race against Toretto, supposedly 7,500 RPM was preferred, not far from its unusually high 8,000 RPM limit. Those with the swanky Nismo version, one of about a bazillion special editions, could even look at the G-forces and lap times.
Preferably, not on a public road. Well, unless you were street racing, of course.
The Skyline GTR also had an adjustable rear spoiler. Not on-the-fly adjustable as we see with exotics these days, but if you had the right tool and pretended to understand aerodynamics, you could change the angle and maybe something positive would happen. You never know.
Of course, whichever angle that you chose, even the ones that you learned in geometry, you'd expect a rear view severely obscured.
Still, Nissan cared somewhat about your rear visibility because you got a rear wiper with a wiper jet. Not exactly a standard fixture and fitting on a car of this type. And in a bid to maintain improved weight distribution as seen on the R33, Nissan undid some of the R34 GTR shopping and golf club potential to store multiple ECUs in the boot. Even so, weight distribution was said to be 53-47 front to rear, making the black sheep of the family, the R33 GTR, the most balanced. This was one area where its slower, less powerful sibling could claim victory. Remember, the Skyline was not just a sports car, it could do more sedate lifestyles too. Also, no four-door option this time, taking things back to the original Godzilla. And though it was possible to sit in the back, it was, well, not very ideal.
Despite the fact that it was Nissan at its best, the Japanese manufacturer was seemingly keen to avoid any negative badge connotations.
As such, you could find the iconic GTR, short for Gran Turismo Racing logo, in multiple locations across the body and in the cockpit, but never a mention of its maker. Not that the Skyline needed much introduction. It was not only a menacing figure on any road at the time and even now, its 4 circular rear lights were becoming some of the most recognizable in motoring history. As with previous Skylines of the 90s, the R34 GTR was built in Japan and sold in Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, and, for the first time, the UK.
But again, not in the US. At least nothing except the 14 to 16 cars, depending on, well, who you ask.
Thanks to former Skyline importer Motorex, which managed to circumvent the 25-year US import law, and not one car was crushed. So, the story goes, Motorex brought in R34s and made them NHTSA inspection approved with crash tests, airbags, emissions, and other certifications. All the boring but, well, usual safety stuff. That and the fact that the US government took an unusually relaxed stance on the process and allowed these cars to stay in the US with unlimited mileage explains why you do see them around from time to time.
How much for a US legal R34 GTR? Well, good question. The last one sold for $320,187, so you might actually need to sell 2 close relatives. But guess what? I got you covered, because if you want to snag this Ideal T for a limited time, you can up here, and it costs like 1/1000th of the cost.
Then again, in 2024, the 25-year rule is up and the R34 GTR will finally be fair game on US soil.
Hold up, come here. Let's talk about paint for a second, because, well, we all know that Bayside Blue R34 GTRs is about as sought after as it gets. But is it a rare color choice? Well, nope.
Only white was slightly more popular at nearly 2,983 cars built, 104 less than the infamous shade of Bayside Blue, and we blame Paul Walker. As with the R33, the R34 was no stranger to special editions. At launch, you had the V-Spec, which was followed by the V-Spec 2. The V-Spec included an active rear limited slip differential, stiffer suspension in case you hated your spine, new front splitter, and a rear diffuser. In a bid to make the R34 more UK road friendly, the 80 cars imported there featured a full Connolly leather interior instead of cloth, underbody diffusers, 3 additional oil coolers, and that stiffer, sportier ride. By the year 2000, having survived Y2K and an article from Clarkson saying that he would leave Top Gear forever to be replaced by James May, the V-Spec 2 took the reins.
There was also an N1 version, which ticked the box for enthusiasts who wanted more speed and less fuss. As with the R33 and the R32, Nissan removed the air conditioning, the radio, the boot carpet, rear wiper, and probably would have told you to go on a diet too, if it was possible.
As a homologation special, the R34 GTR N1 was made in limited numbers. Supposedly 45 were built and 12 of those were used by Nismo for kicking butt on track. Wanting to break convention with the sequel to a special edition, Nissan's V-Spec 2 from October 2000 made the suspension even stiffer.
Yes, stiffer.
What did your spine ever do to deserve this? It also got black cloth upholstery instead of gray, a lighter carbon fiber bonnet, bigger rear brake rotors, and aluminum pedals. Oh, and who could forget the even rarer V-Spec 2N1, which went on yet another Jenny Craig diet. This time, some of that thinner paint seen on previous Skylines and an unfinished carbon fiber hood. With only 18 made, allegedly, good luck trying to source one. Want heated seats for added comfort? Well, Nissan's M-Spec had you covered, creating a more street-friendly car in the process.
With 2002 looming and production coming to a close, Nissan offered 1,002 cars in V-Spec 2 and M-Spec Nürburgring editions. These cars got the higher power engine mods, taking the total to around 330 horsepower, plus higher boost pressures and other sporty improvements. The majority of the run ended up as the V-Spec 2 Nürburgring editions.
By the time the production of the R34 GTR was over, an estimated 11,577 cars had been sold, a far cry from the multitude of R32 GTR sales seen beforehand and less than the more limited R33 GTR. Rounding out the R34 GTR legacy was one last mighty road-going version. It was known as the Z-Tune, and it was quite the weapon. 500 horsepower, a displacement bump to 2.8 liters, upgraded IHI turbochargers, and a swatch of engine strengthening amongst other things. Here, that polite, well-meaning Japanese gentleman's agreement was not just thrown out of the window, it was driven over and set on fire. Find a long enough straightaway and 0 to 60 would be gone in just 3.8 seconds. The top speed? Estimated at around 200 miles per hour. Not exactly the speed of safety. Even the body was bonkers, as each of the 19 cars, 2 of which were prototypes, were basically stripped down and rebuilt to allow for improved strengthening and rigidity.
And if those upgrades hadn't already completely emptied your bank account, well, carbon fiber componentry was liberally applied. Because when money is no object, adding strength and saving every kilogram makes complete sense. Well, not with the C, with the S, like sense.
The Z-Tune was by no means a quiet ending, and the R35 would keep the GTR story going in the next few years. But it seemed like the end of something special. Not just the Skyline badge for the time being, but Japanese sports cars in general. Because, as we know, that ever-constricting force of eco-conservation means that the likes of mega Japanese performance is unlikely to happen ever again. At least not without big electric motors and even bigger batteries.
Therefore, cars like the R34 GTR, adored and revered by hundreds of millions of people, now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, will only go up in value.
Mere mortals will never get the chance to own one, let alone experience what still feels like a modern drive. Look, but don't touch, kids. To the effect, nobody's winning by an inch or a mile, unless, well, you happen to own one. And if you do, treat it like the piece of motoring history that it deserves. Kick it into overdrive and take it on a country road. Let those twin turbos shunt you along at blissful paces while that unrivaled Japanese electronic trickery pulverizes each corner. Let Godzilla rule the road once again. Future generations deserve to see what all this fuss was about.
And this is it for the Nissan Skyline GTR R34 Overdrive video. I hope, well, you found it enjoyable, maybe even entertaining. Be sure to tap the like, subscribe, and notification bell down below for more car stories that include, well, the upcoming Overdrive on the R35. Be sure to stay tuned for that, and hey, real quick, go check out our R32 and R33 Overdrive videos right here. This is Brad, and this has been Ideal. And promise me one thing, keep living the ideal lifestyle.